Republican Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, who serves in the Senate Banking, Finance, and Budget Committee. So, Senator, thank you so much for being with us. As I just explained, there was this letter. It shook the markets up some. What do you make of it? Was the Secretary right in saying we should not extend these programs?
Secretary Mnuchin is 100% correct about this. And as he pointed out in his letter, he is simply following through with what is clearly expressed in the statute, what is clearly and unambiguously the intent of Congress, and that is that these were always meant to be a very temporary set of facilities designed only to allow the private capital markets to resume their normal functioning. That happened, frankly, back in March or April. It happened almost immediately upon the announcement of these facilities. They actually worked better than I had even hoped. And as one of the authors who was in the room drafting this statute, it was absolutely unambiguous that we intended for these facilities to terminate after the crisis passed. The crisis in financial market terms, and that's what we were addressing, that passed a long time ago, and the financial markets they came back massively with tremendous liquidity, record volumes of corporate debt issuance, low rates, tight spreads. These markets have been phenomenal, and there is absolutely no need to continue, perhaps indefinitely in some people's mind, this backup facility. It served its purpose. It's time to go away.
So, Senator, what do you make of the Fed response then? Because, as you say, the financial markets came back very fast. I think most people think it was a combined effort with the Fed really saying we have your back and Congress really injecting a lot of money into the economy. At the same time, we went away from the shutdown, and now it looks like we're going into something that may be just as bad, even worse in the sense that it's across the entire country. Do we need to have these facilities in our back pocket, at least for the next 3 or 4 months, as we face this real dramatic upturn in the COVID-19 epidemic?
No, absolutely not, because these facilities are not there because of the possibility of an upturn in the pandemic. There's no question. There's been a significant outbreak. It's a very real medical and public health issue, but that's not what these facilities were about. They were about enabling the capital markets to function again. It got to the point where a borrower couldn't issue debt. An investor couldn't sell a bond. There was no market. There was no liquidity. That's what we were trying to fix, and we fixed it. Today, despite the significant health challenges that we've got to deal with, there's tremendous liquidity in the corporate bond market, the commercial paper market, borrowers, even in private banking markets. Surveys of small and medium-sized businesses say the overwhelming majority of credit-worthy borrowers can access capital. So, look, I'm not surprised that a central bank would like to keep more powers and more tools, but that doesn't make it right. The statute is clear. Secretary Mnuchin is following the law and the intent of Congress exactly as he should be.
Would you anticipate that a Biden administration might reverse this?
Well, I don't think they've got the legal authority to do that. And if they were to attempt to do that, that would be a huge mistake. Look, is it possible that something could happen that would cause financial markets to freeze up again sometime in the future? Sure, it's always a possibility. And the last time it happened, Congress demonstrated the ability to turn on a dime and pass massive legislation to free up those markets. We had unanimous support for a multi-trillion-dollar package to rescue the collapsing economy. If we were to get into a bad spot in the future in this regard, the appropriate thing to do is go back to Congress and say, hey, here's why we need to do X, Y, and Z. Congress has demonstrated its willingness to do that.
Senator, I think I understand the distinction you're making between the capital markets on the one hand and the economy on the other. They're not the same thing. We are seeing, are we not, some weakness now in the recovery. The recovery was coming back very nicely, but now we have various indications, probably triggered by the uptake in the coronavirus. We are seeing some weakness in the economy. What do we need to do to really address that issue?
So I wouldn't overstate that. We're seeing still a tremendous amount of strength, record volumes, all-time record levels of new home starts, tremendous growth in employment. Nobody thought that the unemployment rate would be below 7% at the end of October, which is stunning. Strong retail sales. Consumer balance sheets are in good shape. Corporate America has the liquidity it needs. So, look, I think there are some things we could do. Republicans in the Senate twice voted almost unanimously, Republicans, for a targeted bill. It was several hundred, about $500 billion, so not small, but it was targeted. It was an extension of the small business lending program, but only for small businesses that were actually adversely affected. It was an extension of a bump up in unemployment benefits, but not the same scale that we had before. It would be a liability protection so that employers of all kinds who are complying with the normal safety protocols would not be subject to frivolous lawsuits. That could pass with virtually every Republican senator voting for it. That could pass yet again tomorrow. It's our Democratic colleagues who blocked that legislation. So I'm hoping that Speaker Pelosi is willing to do that on which we agree, and then we can continue to discuss the areas where we disagree.
So, Senator, I'd like to change for a moment to transition. I understand that President Trump doesn't think there needs to be a transition because he thinks he won the election. But as time goes on and more certifications come in, including Georgia just came in earlier today, at some point it becomes less and less likely that he'll remain in the White House. You said 10 days ago that they should start the transition against the eventuality, which seems the more likely course, that in fact we will have a President Biden. Do you see any movement in that direction? Are you talking to the White House? What are they saying to you?
Yeah, so there's a lot of communication that's happening. It's not what I think should be. I think there should be a full conventional transition underway. As you point out, it is very likely that Joe Biden is going to be the next president of the United States. He is very likely to be certified, and that's the way this is likely to play out. And if I'm wrong, then at some point when I'm proven wrong, the transition can come to an end and becomes a moot point. But why wouldn't we go ahead and prepare for what certainly looks like the high probability event?
Okay, Senator, always a pleasure to talk with you. Really appreciate your time today. That's Senator Pat Toomey.